These are cold hardy mesems we're going to be looking at. All of these have taken well below zero in the Colorado, Denver area. And you'll be in Albuquerque, you're warmer yet. You're a whole zone warmer, so you're going to be able to grow plants that I can't grow. Let's look at a map of South Africa first, because one of the things that I found out, and some others have as well, you see this red line on the map, where it says summer and year-round rainfall boundary. That's important because most of the plants that are hardy can take year-round moisture, not just winter moisture. To the small side of that red boundary, it's all mostly winter moisture. To the right-hand side, where the most part of the country is, they get mostly summer and year-round moisture. And so most of the plants we're looking at to be able to grow have to be able to take summer moisture, and the winter moisture plants won't do very well in our climates. I put Beaufort West and Sutherland on here down in the lower part of the map, and then Kimberly. And those are areas with large numbers of hardy mesems. Let's go back a little bit. In 1980, Panayiotis Keladis became the curator of the rock garden at Denver Botanic Gardens. And he got in touch with somebody in British Columbia at the Botanic Gardens there that was growing Delosperma species from Basuto land. It turned out that was Delosperma nubigenum, which all of you know. It's the very common yellow ice plant. It's pretty much sterile. It doesn't set seeds, so it's probably a triploid. But that got Panayiotis and other people to thinking, could there be other hardy mesems? And sure enough, Paul Heipel, the next year, found that Aloinopsis spathulata, which is this plant, was hardy. And now there's a whole range of hybrids that have been developed by a number of people using Aloinopsis and Ananthus, Aloinopsis and Aloinopsis schunesii, and some others, to come up with all kinds of leaf and color combinations. And some of you probably grow these yourselves. Bill Adams, who owns Sunscape Nursery in Pueblo, took it a step further and started making active crosses of some of these. So here's another one of his crosses, Opera Mauve. You just saw Halo. And here's Opera Mauve from a little different point of view. A little bit about the microclimate I grow these in. I grow these on a flagstone patio that butts up against a 3-foot-high flagstone wall. And that wall has several tons of soil in it. It's tiered. And so these plants get really good protection from the coldest weather. Most times they're totally protected. But last year, for 4 days in February, we had below zero weather after having basically no cold weather from October on. And that did kill and damage a few things. But despite that, this is still worth doing. Most things survived and weren't even harmed. So if you get one of those polar vortexes, you can be pretty assured that most of your plants are going to be okay if you've got them in a good microclimate. Here's Aloinopsis schunesii. That's one that has small yellow flowers. Here it is, totally dormant. It's got a nice red color, good, probably anthocyanins, I'm not positive. But this is a hardy plant, does very well here. Almost all the Aloinopsis are hardy, and they certainly all would be in New Mexico. And that includes Delanthe as well. And here's Delanthe Thudacumii. This is only a 1-year-old seedling. It's about 3 inches across. One of the great things about mesems is most of them are so easy from seed. You can have a plant ready to be put in the ground in less than a year usually. And this is very succulent, but it was unfazed by the unexpected below zero weather we had in February. And this will have sort of yellowish flowers. Here's the plant I started with, Rabiea albipuncta. All the rabias in, some of the taxonomy on rabias is probably a little dubious because if you look at them, you can hardly tell any difference. The flowers are all very similar, and the bodies of the plants are all very similar. So I don't think the genetics have spoken on this group yet. But anyway, they're totally hardy. I've been growing Rabiea albipuncta. I grew this from seed originally. And now the clump is 1 foot long and 6 inches across. And I have a couple clumps like that. It sets prolific seed. It's taken 15 below zero without a scratch. and it's a great plant. You can see why. This blooms anywhere from February to June. Here's a close-up. These flowers are about 2.5 inches across, and then as they age, they sort of twirl, the tips of the petals twirl, and they're orange on the back, so it's very striking, yellow and orange. And then, of course, the stems themselves are, even after they've started coming out of dormancy, are purple and green. So it's an attractive plant all year long. Here it is in full fruit and seed. There's the big capsules. I've got tons of seed. If anybody would like some seed, let me know. I'll be glad to send you a packet. It's very easy from seed. There's lots of Delospermas, as we know. There's dozens of different ones now. Lots of hybrids. New ones have been discovered frequently in the last 10 years. So I'm just going to show you what the ones I like the most that I think are the best. Here's Delosperma congestum. It forms a tight mat. It's not real invasive like some of the Delospermas are. It stays compact, and you can see how it blooms. It's just spectacular when it's in bloom. Here's one of the hybrids that's fairly new. This is Garnet. This is in a new hardy succulent garden at Denver Botanic Gardens. It's called the Nexus Garden. So when you come to Denver, be sure and go to the Botanic Gardens and see the Mesa Garden, which is loaded with hardy cacti and succulents, and the Nexus Garden. And these Garnet Delosperma clumps are just spectacular. People are standing in line to take photographs of these when they bloom. This garden's going on its 4th year, so it's still pretty young. Here's another really good one. This is a John Steyerman hybrid. Some of you have heard of him. He's a grower in Salt Lake City. The big advantage he has is Salt Lake City is zone 7, and it gets a little more moisture than Albuquerque does. So it's just about a perfect climate for Mesemms. But this is one of his hybrids. It's spectacular. Those flowers are just, this photograph pretty much does it justice as showing how spectacular it is in bloom. Here's another one. Now this is no longer considered to be a Delosperma, Spalmanthoides. Steve Hammer has called this something else, and I forget the genus name. Do you know? Well, Steve probably knows. But in the Mesemb study group newsletter, he described it as a different genus. And so he's going to be on the CSSA program in a few weeks, so I'll ask him what that is. But this also is spectacular. This one likes a lot of sun. I think it probably does fine in Albuquerque. It does pretty well here. It's a little tricky. It's tougher than most Delospermas. But these clumps can get about 8 to 10 inches across. And it's a real mat. It's a rock garden plant. It's a bun plant. So anybody would like to have this in their garden, I think. Here's Nenanthus transvalensis. This is the source of the hybrids between Aloinopsis and some of the Aloinopsis hybrids. Bill Adams calls them Aloinanthus, but that's a gnothogenus that he's made up, I think. But these can come in several different colors. Here's one that was starting to flower in February last year. It's not a great picture, sorry about that. But it just shows you how tough these plants are. I mean, it was warm in early February, and it decided to start to bloom. And then we had that below zero weather, so it stopped blooming. And then as soon as it warmed up again, it started blooming again. So these are our tough plants. And here's a transvalensis hybrid. You can see it looks just like transvalensis with the leaves, but it's obviously been crossed with probably spathulata to get this color. The potential for hybrids with these is in its infancy, I would say. There's all kinds of things we can still do. Here's another Nenanthus transvalensis. It's in fruit, as you can see. The flowers are very nice. It's hard to beat plants that stay green all year long and then bloom too. Here's one that's not as common. I've given Steve some starts of this, Cadia alticala. This grows way north in the Gatun and the provinces that surround it. And it's not a well-known plant. This originally came from one of Panayiotis' sources. It forms a very tight mat, and you can see it's got a beautiful flower, so it's well worth growing. Here's a couple of Ruschias. This is Hamada. This is like a shrub. This is about, oh, gets about a foot high and 2 or 3 feet across. Has these beautiful small pink flowers. And there's Pulvinaris. Some of you probably grow this. Pulvinaris has several different forms. Flower size can vary. Stem and leaf size can vary quite a bit. And the Ruschias haven't been, nobody's tried to hybridize them yet, so that's another frontier waiting to be explored. Here's a smaller form. Stomatiums. Almost all the stomatiums are hardy, but this is probably the best one, Stomatium agninum. And I started this almost 10 years ago, just after I had some success with the Rabias. This is big. This is over a foot across, and the individual stems are, about the size of, your first 3 fingers. And here it is in bloom. Like most stomatiums, it's a night bloomer, and the flowers are strongly scented, sort of a wintergreen smell. Yeah, apparently they're pollinated by moths and where they grow in South Africa, but it's a delightful plant. Starts blooming in April and continues through June. And it opens just as the sun goes down every evening and stays open till like 10 o'clock. Bergeranthus, there's several Bergeranthus species that are hardy. I'm just going to show Jamesii tonight. Here's the yellow form of Jamesii. Rock solid, you can't go wrong with this. Easy to grow, easy to propagate from cuttings. And here's the white form. This is nice as well. I'm going to cross the white and the yellow form and see what we get. I think this will also cross with Ruschias, Heroas, because Bergeranthus and Heroas are quite closely related. And by the way, if you could just have one book on Mesembs, Mesembs of the World by Steve Hammer and Gideon Smith and several other authors is the best single handbook for these. So I highly recommend it. It's out of print now, but you can find it used. Here's a Heroa calicina. Again, huge flower. These are easy from seed. This plant's about 3 years old from seed. I've got quite a few of them in the garden. They've all started blooming in the last year. Again, this is from the summer rainfall area, and that's the key. Lithops. These are trials this year. And this one looks sort of weird because mice got into it. What they did is they bit just the very top of the plant off, which is sort of perverse. But it's healed, it's coming back, and so I think they'll be okay. Mice are the biggest problem I have. I've used poison bait, I've covered them with wire. Sometimes I can stake the wire in the ground and they will pull it out of the ground and get the plant anyway. So I think poison bait's the only way to go. But based on Early's description of where these grow in South Africa, there's at least 5 species that are probably going to be hardy, certainly in Albuquerque. And I think Leo Chance in Colorado Springs has already grown some of these. So we're trotting on well-plowed ground. Here's Verrucia colosa. This is a clone that Stephen gave me this spring. It's doing great. It's ready to, go underground soon. Here's another form that's quite different. I got this from the plants of the Southwest, the Lithops people in Tucson. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? How many people are growing hardy Mesembs, not counting Delospermas right now?
I am.
So I know you are, Ralph.
Can you hear me? Is the more important question.
I can hear you, just barely. Anyway, I hope some of you will try it. Of course, Mesa Garden has a lot of the seed, and they still have plants for a lot of these too. There's, like I said, there's at least 3 or 4 more species of Lithops that should be hardy in Albuquerque, if not here.
How much sun do you give them? Because the experience I had is that full sun kills them here. I can't give anything full sun.
You may have to give some half-day sun then.
Yeah, like the Delosperma, like I've struggled with the heat. Like you say, we can grow more, but I feel with the when I put them out, the heat just cooks them. So like, how do you deal with that, really?
I think what I would try in Albuquerque, and maybe you've already done this, I don't know, but I would give them morning light only and afternoon shade. In our climate, it cools off enough at night, so that makes up for the heat in the afternoon. And your issue is you have higher night temperatures than we do. But if you have trouble with things getting cooked, just give them a half day in the morning only and not in the afternoon. See how that works. Stephen, what do you think about that?
No, I agree with that completely. Of all of the Mesemms, the most sensitive here to the heat are the Delospermas. They do need some afternoon shade, or they cook, and they do need to be watered about once a week or once every 10 days from May to October. And it's fine if we get some rain, but our monsoon kind of pooped out this year, and they do need water when it doesn't rain. They don't need a lot, but they just need enough to keep them going.
Is it easier if you plant them in the ground compared to pots? Because I plant them in the pots and
much better plant them in the ground. There's no question about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have had luck with them in pots, and I figured that maybe be easier because I don't have half-day sun. I have zero shade in my house. Like I get all-day sun all year long. There's not one single tree on my property.
Well,
so
like,
yeah, I try to put them in pots, and they're just struggling this year. They're just really bad. So
I mean, there's if you don't have the right kind of microclimate, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
Some place where your house is has a half day of sun. It's just geometry.
Right.
It's got to be.
Also, Delospermas are the most sensitive to being cooked. Most of the others can take more sun and more heat.
I have really good luck with the Ruschia's pulveranus, or that one, the Ruschia. Mm-hmm. And that actually gets really a lot of sun, and it does get cooked, and it just is fine. It stays really fine. But I mean, I do have the west side of my house that would be considered half day, but it doesn't, the sun doesn't go past that until after 1 p.m. So a couple hours in that full sun, they don't stand a chance.
1 p.m. is local noon here. So half the day is gone at 1 p.m.
I know, but that's still that's still too much sun, is what I'm saying. Is by 1, they've been in the sun for, if the sun came up at 7 or 8, that's way too many hours, because as soon as the sun comes up, it's hot at my house. It's hot.
Yeah, but the only time sun is a problem is 3 hours before local noon and 3 hours afterwards. So there really isn't a problem from, it starts at 10 o'clock for us to 1 for the first half of the day, and 1 to 4 for the second half. The other light's useless.
Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt that everybody's growing environment is different, and the only way you can figure it out usually is with trial and error. And our problem is winter cold, so I have to take that into account more than anything else.
Ralph, are you ready to go?
If you can hear me, otherwise, yes. I think not.
No,
I can hear you.
Keep on talking.
Go.
We can hear you, Ralph.
You cannot hear me. So.
Oh, yes.
We can hear you.
You can. You're good.
Go for it.
Okay, go, Ralph.
We're not going to get out of this.
Okay, so I'm going to have to start up my program.
Yep.
Because I restarted my computer.
Share screen.
I guess I would comment along Daniel Carvajal's comment that I have a lot of trouble with Delospermas too. cooking them. And okay, so maybe I'm getting ready to go here, if I can remember how to.
Hit the go button, Ralph.
Yeah, I'm hitting the share screen. And here,
It's your
I'm
sister.
gonna turn.
share. Did
You're
anybody
on.
see anything?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're on, Ralph.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about things that I've grown in my yard, and based on Rod's comments, I'm going to add a few more. I think the problem I have in my yard is not the winter cold, but the summer heat. And Steve has been over a few times and has seen Rabias that are pretty stressed. I grow a lot of Delospermas. Right now, the Delospermas in this section, which get the most sunlight, are pretty cooked, even though I'm watering the heck out of them. So, and this wall here faces, call it southeast. So, and then I've got the house off over on this side. So these plants are getting maybe 3 or 4 hours of sunlight at the hottest part of the day, or morning, I should say. But I have a tough time with these guys.
Ralph, you're stuck on the first picture. Nothing is showing besides the first thing, the title. No flowers.
You're on your title slide still, Ralph.
Okay, well.
We see your mouse moving though.
Yeah, that works.
Okay,
Click on the second picture, see what happens.
yeah, hang on. Okay, I'm gonna try something else. Hang on, guys. Oh, geez. Here we go. Okay, you see that? Correct?
Try the next picture.
Okay. Here's the next picture. Do you see anything?
Nope.
We still see your title slide. I think it's because it's sharing your others. There we go. There we go.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna have to leave it like this, guys.
That's fine, Ralph. It looks great.
Okay, and I can maybe do a little bit here. Okay, so these are some Delospermas in my front yard. They're on the east side of the house, so they get shade after about 1 o'clock. And this wall here faces southeast. But the ones over on the east edge that get the most sun really get cooked. And that's a continuing problem. I'll show you some others that have more shade that do quite well. I love Delospermas. Cooperi, unfortunately, are extremely invasive. If we go back to the first slide, you see all these nice white ones? They've been completely eradicated by the Cooperi taking over. I also grow some other Delospermas. I've lost the name for these guys. The only difference is the leaf looks a little bit different. I love the flowers. Cooperi has the most iridescent flowers. There are also, I'm going to make this fairly quick, guys. There are all sorts of colors, as Rod was saying. This one, I think, is Allen's apricot. It tends to be sort of a peachy pink kind of thing. Some of the others that are, I don't know if they're hybrids. Steve, do you know if they're hybrids or what the heck they're doing?
No, fire spinner is not a hybrid.
Okay, it's just a selection.
No, it's a species. It's a different species.
Okay.
It's never been formally named yet.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see. Steve gave me some fire spinner seed that he had set. And I hope in a year to have a whole bunch of new plants beside this single one that I got from the local Lowe's or something like that. Again, the flowers are just magnificent. These guys are growing in a place that gets a little more shade, and they look wonderful year round. They don't get burned out. There are many, many colors, at least around here. On occasion, you can go to the big box stores like Lowe's or Home Depot, and you'll see lots of different colors of Delospermas in the garden section. I don't know if that's the case in Colorado.
I mean, the Botanic Gardens has produced millions of them, and some of them are in Plant Select, so they're all over the place here.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have anything like Plant Select. This is another one I really like.
Oh, yeah.
That I got from, again, from, I think, Lowe's, Jewel of the Desert. And there are all sorts of different colors. There's red and purple and yellow and white.
So he's gonna be.
Delospermas are definitely worth growing. You just need to have a place that they like. Here's the yellow version. Now for other more normal things that I grow, I've been growing spathulata outside in these red cinders, which Steve tells me is a really horrible thing to do to it. But it's been growing for many years there. As many of us understand, the ability to modify our landscaping is maybe limited by our significant other. It would probably be preferable.
I'm gonna tune this.
Was that kind enough, Doris? Come on, Doris, speak up.
I just muted myself, so
Now she
embarrass
mutes.
you. I heard
Okay.
that.
Okay. They have wonderful flowers. This thing will put up with my red cinders. It's by my front door, so it gets maybe a half a day of sun. And lots of people should try and grow it. I also grow rabias. Steve tells me this is deformis. And these guys actually took, or several of the plants took 15 below. When we had that terrible storm in 2011, it had been warm. In fact, things were starting to leaf out, and then we got a really cold blast, and these guys took it. They weren't real happy, but they took it. They have great flowers, at least in Albuquerque. They will, oh, what did I do there? Okay, guys. This is going from bad to worse.
Just drag it back, Ralph.
How about the
Yeah.
bar at the bottom? Move the bar to the right.
Oh, yeah. There we go. We'll get it eventually, maybe. There we go. Okay. Oh, where was I? At least in Albuquerque, they'll bloom in February many times, which is very, very nice. I like to have something blooming as early as possible. And if anybody has seen my yard, they know that I can't run my machine. I like to have things blooming as much as possible. Here's a bunch of them in bloom in this red scoria, which may have saved them when it got so darn cold. Steve and I have talked about what this thing is. It's a Ruschia. I think Steve thought it was Piscoderma. Am I wrong? Steve doesn't want to respond. Okay.
I had to find my mouse.
Oh,
I
what do
used
you think it is?
pulvinaris.
Oh, pulvinaris. Okay. You can see I have very large plants in my yard, and these are probably second or third generation plants, meaning they came up as volunteers to replace the originals, the ones that were in the yard. And they do quite well. They bloom in April, May. And they're trying to bloom again a little bit this fall because we had some rain, and I've been watering them a little extra. Another thing that's worth growing is Ttitanopsis calcarea. This is in a pot, and I've grown it in the red pumice too in my yard. I think it gets roasted, even though it looks like a tough plant. I think it gets a little bit roasted. I need to do something, Steve. Is there any reason Aloinopsis rubolineata wouldn't grow here?
Oh,
Stephen?
it's hardy.
Yeah. Well, I really like the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
They're very interesting flowers. And I've grown a couple of seedlings, so I may have a chance to try some.
Looks like it.
They're currently now sitting multiple plants per pot in 2.5-inch square pots. So if you guys play your cards right, you may have a chance to buy some at the next spring show. They seem to be doing well in the 2.5-inch square pots, but most mesems are relatively easy to grow if you understand when they want to grow. Are they summer growers or fall and spring or whatever? And I'm going to try Lithops salicola. I don't have a picture of all the seedlings, but I made a bunch of seedlings of these guys, and I'm hoping to grow those things too. Steve gave me a list of things that he thought might be cold hardy here in Albuquerque. And once again, I'll probably have to find something besides the red scorium. We'll see. And I think that is the end. Sorry for the problems, folks.
It worked.
It worked.
Thank you.
Now stop
Questions?
sharing. Stop sharing.
Okay, questions, comments, complaints, criticisms?
What's the soil you use in those big pots with the ice plants, the Delosperma?
Most of the, okay, I live in a part of the heights where the soil is sort of decomposed gravel, and it doesn't have hardly any clay in it. So I take that soil and maybe mix 20 or 30% something else, like maybe even manure, think of that, into it to give it a little bit of organic, and they seem to like it.
Yeah, one thing Roy Early said in his program is that lithops get a lot more organic matter in their soil than you would think. So they especially like organic in their soil.
Yeah. Delospermas, I think, should be treated vaguely like petunias in Albuquerque. If you do that, they'll do well.
And does the Ttitanopsis do well with the rain here? Because I had some, and they just rotted when we got like a big storm one time.
The place where I was growing them outside, or a place where I am growing it outside, is this gravelly granite, and it's really well drained.
Okay.
It may make the difference. I think I've had problems with them getting roasted in the summer rather than too much rain.
But where they live, they can get lots of summer rain. So they're adapted to it. You just have to have the right kind of soil, the right drainage. And most Ttitanopsis grow in calcareous, gritty clay.
Yeah, I grow them too, and they do fine here. I didn't show any pictures because all of mine are seedlings, but the drainage is the key thing.
And
Yeah,
Denver,
you always have to try like 2 or 3 times with some plants, to get it right. So I just haven't tried that. I had lost a Ttitanopsis and a Aloinopsis too. They were in my yard, and I've been kind of scared to try them again. I'm like, hopefully after this talk, I'll be getting a lot of information and stuff like that. So
You have
One
to
of
go
the
out there and kill some plants, Daniel.
Yeah.
One of the advantages of growing from seed is you get a lot of plants to try at very little money, so you don't have to worry about that.
Is there any I've tried some like Conophytums from seed, and I didn't have the best. Like, what's the process you guys use? Like, I've grown a lot of cactus from seed. Like, what's different with that? The temperatures that they germinate, or
For
how
sure.
does it differ?
Most of the plants we're talking about are 100 times easier to grow from seed than Conophytums because they're
Okay.
quicker. But if you start out with Rabias or Brugeranthus, they grow so quickly it's ridiculous. But most of them do not like to grow when it's really hot. So try to keep the temperatures moderate.
Like below 80 degrees, I think
Yeah.
makes a difference. The
So
peak temperature in your pot when you're trying to germinate them should be say below 80 or 85 degrees. And with cactus, that doesn't seem to be a problem, does it, Steve?
no,
Usually high temperatures are good to get cactus to germinate. With lithops in particular, I think once it gets above about 80 degrees, they don't germinate hardly.
So now actually would be a good time to try them in the
yes,
fall.
yes, perfect.
I'm going to do that, Daniel, here in a little bit. Right now it's 90 degrees outside, so I'm waiting.
Yeah. Is that like pretty much the same with lithops? I've grown lithops from seed, but I don't really have any process on doing it. I kind of just trialed and erred a little bit. So
Well, get ready to sow them because as soon as the heat breaks, then it's the perfect time.
Keep them damp and keep them sort of cool. And what, maybe 50% sunlight or less?
You know, probably a little bit less than that. Under lights in your house is great.
I'm going to try them under a bench in my greenhouse where they'll maybe get a little bit of direct sunlight, but most of it will be, extremely bright, indirect. We'll see how that goes.
It's temperature too. You don't want the seeds very hot. I think 70 is a better temperature than 80 or 90 for lithops
Yes,
seeds.
definitely. Well, I'm going to jump in here and start my deal and see if it works. Whoops. I forgot a step. I'm coming. Is it up?
Almost. Here you go.
Okay. There we go. All right. Rod, is it ready to go?
Yeah, just hit your return key.
Okay. Okay. Well, you saw the title. It's the same as everybody else's, but I'll be showing similar plants. And one comment I'd make, first of all, about a lot of these plants, they are small, and it's more effective if you have multiple plants that you can set out in the same area, so you get more of a mass effect when they flower. A lot of these plants are less than 3 or 4 inches in diameter. Aloinopsis logani is one of the smallest species in the genus, but I think all Aloinopsis could be grown outside here in most of New Mexico. Here's Aloinopsis malherbii, which has these really white warted leaves, very attractive. By the way, Rod, this plant grows with Lithops viridis.
Yeah,
Viridis,
viridis is one of the hardest to grow. I've got seed, but I'm almost afraid to plant it.
Well, Viridis only has one tiny population.
I
So
know.
everything has to be just right, but I just wanted to say that this does grow with Lithops viridis.
Yeah, I've grown this before, and it survived several winters before it died. So I'm going to try it again.
There's Aloinopsis sativifera, and I just took the photo a few days ago, but in the wintertime when it's cold, the leaves turn really a dark red, very pretty. You've already seen Aloinopsis spathulata. These are in a pot, but as soon as it cools down, I'm going to make a couple of outdoor beds here and start setting these plants out in the ground.
Steve, a quick question.
Yeah.
Where did you get the seed?
A lot of the seeds I got from where I used to own the nursery from Mesemb.
I understand, but they don't offer spathulata seed.
No, but
We'll
I
talk
have-
offline.
yeah, I had a massive seed bank. So anyway, it came from old reserves. And here's a close-up of the leaf on Aloinopsis spathulata. It's kind of looks like a coral reef. Aloinopsis valletii, another one where the leaves are just completely covered with these white tubercles. And Aloinopsis valletii rod is a companion plant to Lithops valletii.
I've got Aloinopsis valletii outside this year, so we'll see how it does.
Yeah. And here's Bergeranthus artis.
Mm-hmm.
It's very tough, but it does enjoy to have a little bit of water when we have one of those spells where we don't get any thunderstorms for several weeks. And here's a really tough plant that's almost indestructible is
Yeah.
Chatiphyllum musculinum. They do flower. The flowers do open up just after sundown. And I forgot to go out and take a picture after the sun went down, but the flowers are kind of this orangey yellow. And these can take just about anything: heat, floods, drought, and they are extremely trivial to grow from seed. So if you want to jump into this area of growing mesembs from seed, this would be a great one to start with. A few years ago, some of the species that were in Lithops got split off and put in this genus Delanthe. And it's because the surface of the leaves are fuzzy. They have really soft hairs instead of the tubercles. And most Delanthes are really tough. They can take a lot of heat and drought. In time, they make a huge taproot. It's, I can't think of a vegetable with a similar taproot, but it would be like a carrot that got about 3 times its thick.
Horseradish.
Horseradish, there you go. They're really tough. And here's a close-up of the flowers of Delanthe. This grows in the Sutherland area, which is supposed to be the coldest station in South Africa. And Ralph showed this. There's just oodles and oodles of cultivars of Delospermas that are around. And probably the best way to get them is by mail order. If you just poke around on Google, you'll find several nurseries that specialize in them, and there's more and more cultivars coming all the time. Ralph mentioned the jewel of the desert. There's all sorts of forms and colors that are circulating in the trade. What I did was that I one one summer, I went to quite a few of the retail nurseries around Albuquerque, and I bought all of the different jewel of the deserts that I could find. And this one's called Ruby, but I just decided to cross them all. So I cross-pollinated all of these jewel of the deserts together because vegetatively they look quite a bit alike. And I'm hoping to get some interesting seedlings that come out of this. I do have a lot of seed, so if any of you want to try some seed, I'll be glad to share some with you of the jewel of the deserts. Then you've seen pictures of these Delospermas in the spring when they flower, and in the wintertime they become very colorful too, just because the leaves turn color when it's really cold. Here's Nubigina, and the leaves get this purplish coloring. And you don't have to worry about any cold here. Most of the Delospermas, they can take any cold that we ever get around most of New Mexico. And here's a close-up of the leaf. Rod, is this just a selection of Delosperma dieri?
Yes, yes.
That was my speculation. Nurseries tend to not like to sell stuff calling it Delosperma dieri. They have to come up with these silly names. The leaves are very succulent, very attractive, and the flower is just amazing. Here's the flower on Red Mountain Flame, and I've been crossing these, and I've made seed of the Red Mountains, and I had different color forms. Here's Fire Spinner. The flowers on Fire Spinner are just absolutely dazzling. They're almost 2 inches across, so the show is just incredible for about 3 weeks. The main time for flowering is about May 1st. And here's the same Nubigina where you saw the plant in the wintertime was all reddish purple. Here it is in early May and flowering up a storm. It's covered with flowers for a good 3 weeks. And Delosperma cooperi is probably the most common one that's in the trade. And so I had a bunch of plants that I was messing around with. I had 3 different clones that all of the flowers on them were 2 inches across, and just this brilliant light purple. And so I've been pollinating these, and so I've got tons of seed with these extra large flowers. And here's a close-up of the flowers. And these will flower for a long time, as long as you water them about once a week until it starts to rain. You can see the leaves just to the left of the flower too. The leaves are nice and succulent. There's Red Mountain Flame and there's Red Mountain. I'm assuming they're all Delosperma dieri. But there's Red Mountain that's also circulating in the trade. By the way, Margaret Todd has an excellent collection of Delospermas, and if you can arrange to see her garden in most of May, you'll just be blown away by the flower show. Now off to
Oh, yeah, full
other Mesembs. Ebracteola fulleri. I've seen this many times in habitat, and it grows in just the most god-awful places. I've seen places where most of the other succulents are dead, like all the euphorbias are dead, and the hoodias are dead, and the sarcocaulins are dead, and they're dead from lack of rainfall. But the last man standing are these Ebracteola. really, really tough.
Just what I need for my red scoria.
Yeah, I think so. Because they grow in places where it's just brutally hot at times in the summer. They make a little cushion. They get about 4 inches across. This
Oh.
is seedling.
Seed?
I've got lots of seedlings. I probably have seed too. I just don't remember. But here's Heraroa in curva, and I found it to be almost indestructible in the summer too. The heat or the dryness or anything. It's just an extremely tough plant, and the flowers open just at sundown. Big yellow flowers. Rod told me the name. I lost the name of it, but it's
Alticola.
it's Cadia alticola, and that's been out in my front yard since I got it from Rod this spring,
Ah, good.
and it's done very well. It's been very happy, and it's taken the hot sun all morning. It's under the shade of a pine tree, so at about 1 o'clock on, it's under the shade of a pine tree. Now, Rod, I put this in because of what you learned by your experimenting, but if this proves to be hardy here in the Albuquerque area, this is going to be just an absolutely dynamite plant.
Yeah, it's not hardy in Denver.
It does grow with some other really hardy plants.
Mm-hmm.
It grows with Ttitanopsis hugo-schlechteri
Mm-hmm.
and some other things. So I am going to try it with some seedlings.
It'll be a very popular plant, like you said, if it makes it there.
It's just an amazing plant. It's so sculptural. Now, I took close-ups of some lithops that have a reasonable chance to make it here in I suppose, New Mexico below about 7,000 feet. Fulviceps has a reasonable chance because it does live in the puff adder area. And puff adder is a town in South Africa. And there's a lot of other plants growing around puff adder that are very hardy. So I'm going to give this a try. It's an amazing thing to look at. Pattern is just a knockout. Here's Fulviceps coming into flower. They flower right out of the center of the plant body. Here's another one that should be very hardy in this area. Is Lithops lesliei. This just happens to be variety venturi, but Lithops lesliei grows over a huge area. And if you look up modern climate records, several of the areas where it's living now, they fall down to 10 degrees in the winter. So if you factor in historic climate possibilities going back several hundreds of years, all of the lesliei, there's a very reasonable chance that they would do just fine here. The only caveat I would say was that during June, until the monsoon kicks in, it would be a good idea to water it once or twice during the month of June. But the patterns are just amazing. Here's a collection of Lithops verriculosum. I've got lots of them that I've grown from seed, and they're all mature now. They'll be flowering here real soon. It's one of the side benefits of growing a lot of them from seed is that you can see all of this endless variation. No two are ever identical. Here's a close-up of Lithops alcampiae. This grows just a little bit west of Lithops lesliei. So this too, I would expect it to be hardy here. And Lithops hookeri, that grows just slightly west of alcampiae. Definitely these areas freeze in the winter. So very good chance. And this is just on the edge. It's on the summer rainfall side of the highest mountains in the Mako-land. Norinii, there's a reasonable chance that that would be hardy here. Panioti told me that he's had some out in Denver, and he covers them with a sheet of fiberglass for the winter, just to keep them dry. There's Mananthus margaritiferus. All of the Mananthus should be hardy here. And a close-up of Mananthus prolevensi. I do want to make a comment. I thought of it while Ralph was showing his pictures. A lot of these plants like Mananthus, Rabiea, Ttitanopsis, etc., they'll often start flowering in February. And if you had a cactus flowering in February and it got down to 10 degrees, I think in just about all situations, that flower would be killed. But it would be over for that flower. But these late winter flowering Mesemms, it can get down to 0 while they're flowering, and the flower is not damaged at all. And I've got many years of experience with this. You can pollinate those flowers, even if it freezes really hard. The fruit will still form and the seeds will still be good. So it's amazing that they can flower while it's so cold, and the flower still successfully goes through the whole process of making seeds. Here's another one that grows in the same area as Lithops lesliei. It's a real tiny plant, but it'll make a mat. Neohenrisia sebetii. They flower at night. You've seen the flowers on Rabias. They're very large and lustrous. They open late in the afternoon. And this plant was out in a sunny spot all winter, so you can see the reddish colors on the leaves. And the stress from the sun has made these white tubercles quite pronounced. Stress will make them more beautiful as long as it's not too much. And here's Albuquerque, another Rabiea in the summer during more lush conditions where the reddish coloration is gone. Another tough plant, Rhombophyllum Delosperma. This one is out in a full sun part of one of my backyard gardens, and they had to put up with being roasted a lot, and they took it. Now, probably one of the best plants to start out with growing in this area is Ruschia pulvinaris. It's extremely trivial to grow. It's very eager to grow late winter and spring. You can water it once a week or once every 10 days, and it'll grow like crazy. And it'll be just completely covered with these flowers for about 6 weeks. And then when the real heat kicks in, like about the middle of June, then they start to flag, and they don't flower as much anymore. But never mind, the heat of summer does not seem to bother these at all. broad-showed Stomatium magninum. It's a very chunky, fat plant, very tough. There's another Stomatium alburoseum. There's many species, but they seem to flower either yellow or whitish pink. There's a close-up of Ttitanopsis calcarea. The patterns on the leaves is just incredible, just extremely beautiful. And when I had the nursery in Berlin, a lot of them in late winter, they'll turn purple from the cold. So I think they're the prettiest in February when it's still cold, and the colors are just amazing. This is probably the most beautiful Ttitanopsis, Jugoschlechterii. It grows in widely scattered colonies over a huge area. And some of the colonies are close to where Aloinopsis sativora grows. So there's a very reasonable expectation that this should be hardy. The pattern on the leaves are just spectacular. And here's the flower on Jugoschlechterii. And that's all. So that is it. I stop sharing. And welcome any comments or questions. And don't be afraid to try this stuff. It's not hard.
Tomorrow would be a good chance to pick some up at the Santa Fe sale.
I don't
At
know.
It's at the old Santa Fe greenhouse tomorrow all day. If
Well,
anyone can make it.
since Donnie Barnett will be there, and he grows quite a few of these plants, so that would be for sure something that you would find some.
And then the garden place there, they sell these too, because they're a supplier to High Country Gardens, and they sell the Ruschias, the ice plants, the Delospermas. They sell all of those normally too. So they'll have some of the Cooperi, the more normal varieties too. So if you don't want to risk it on hybrids or whatever.
Right.
I got a question on some of those flowers that you had. The stamens were smashed around the pistil very tightly. Are they self-pollinated, or do they open up later, or what? How does some pollinator get in there to do his business?
Well, they are not self-fertile. None of them are self-fertile, but the flowers do open. It's just a matter of the time of day. Some don't open until just after sundown. So they're pollinated by various insects, primarily moths, little bees, ants.
Yeah, I always have to hand pollinate the Rabies to get seed. If I don't, they don't produce any.
Well, that might be because it's too cold for insects to be out yet.
Maybe.
Rod, you had mentioned a problem with mice. I have a similar problem with a bird down here in Los Lunas, that pulls everything, all the little seedlings. If it sees something greenish or unusual in my little gravel, he pulls them out of the pots or he pulls them out of the ground. And so I can go out and get one. In fact, I looked out earlier and half of the ones I had sitting on the patio are now outside the pots.
What you have to do, what I've started doing, is putting hardware cloth over them.
Okay.
You can
All
get that at Lowe's or Home Depot.
Yeah, I've got some. Okay, thanks.
Donnie Barnett, I saw what he was doing. He got some long nails, and you put the sharp end of the nail up, and you space them around the garden, and that intimidates the birds, not the land.
He's also using red Christmas ornaments and staking them in the ground around plants that are in the ground. And he says that that works pretty well too.
Okay, so this is Lithops fulviceps. It's just starting for me. Those are the flowers now coming on. There's all kinds of beginnings here and there. This will go on for the next 2 months.
I think you should
Whoops.
put this here. See?
Okay,
There you go.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
Yes.
so I put these in here maybe 5 years ago, and they just divide. I don't know how many plants were there to start with, but it wasn't this many, of course. It's just all crowded and stuff. I mean, there's hardly anything in here to. I mean, it's just crammed. But flowering goes on forever.
Time to repot, Sig.
No, you kidding?
Yes. One stem per
It'll-
each pot.
It'll own my property if I do that. See, here are the flowers. Here's a little bud starting up.
Gotta turn it to the camera.
Yeah, it's kind of like working in a mirror when you don't know how to do it.
There you go.
There you go.
But it's a great plant. It just grows and grows.
well, I think as we work on it, I'm expecting that we're going to find more kinds of mesembs that are hardy here than there are kinds of cacti that are hardy here.
Has anyone tried the Forcaria? I know that
They're not hardy in Denver, but they may be there.
yeah, what's his name? John Thompson in Colorado or in Pueblo. He has said that they're cold hardy 7B zone, so potentially here.
Yes. Donnie Barnett has tried some in Pueblo. So we just have to try.
Yeah, they really won't take below 0.
No, well, below 0 is pretty rare here.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind.
It's less than once a decade.
It's
Mhm.
got way rare. In the last 18 years, and I've lived in White Rock, every winter when I first moved in, we would get 10 below around Christmas time for one or two nights, just zapped down. I haven't seen 10 above 0 in about 5 years. It's gotten so warm. It's just,
Yeah.
it's hard to describe. There's a major change in climate going on. There's no doubt about it.
Well,
And
we,
then just wait till a polar vortex comes and we get below 15 again, you know, you never know.
we had a normal winter this last winter. So
But when you garden like I do, the differences in the last 18 years of gardening is just beyond description.
what I'd recommend is if you've got a plant you don't want to lose, cover it.
Yeah. Make a bed for your mesembs and your lithops, etc. And if we have a couple of cold nights every winter, just throw an old sleeping bag over it.
Leo Chance in Colorado Springs covers all of his plants if it's going to get below 10 degrees.
Wow.
So-
And it doesn't take much. It can be a sheet, an old sheet from one of your beds will
Yeah.
give you a couple of degrees of protection.
Well,
And
you
if it's
can get-
worse than that, if it's worse than that, cardboard boxes.
I recommend frost cloth. You can buy it at any nursery and it'll last for years. You can roll it up and put it in the garage during the summer and then bring it out again in the winter. That works as good as anything and it's not expensive.
Is it
If
a
it gets wet,
plastic?
if it gets wet, it won't coat the plants like a sheet would.
It's a plastic fiber.
It's
sort
a
of thing?
spun fiberglass, and
Oh,
it's really, if you haven't seen it before, any garden center would carry it. Just ask for frost cloth because people will use it mostly to extend their season for their vegetable crops, right? But it works.
Onto the Southwest sells it here in Albuquerque.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm sure you'll have no trouble finding it.
I have it on airplane mode. I don't know why it came on.
The older you get, I can say I'm going to turn 70 in January, and the older I get, The less I want to see plants I spent years growing to specimen size get wiped out by a cold spell. So
I'd lay long odds you can find it at Amazon.
yeah, sure. Well, thanks, Stephen. That was great.
Yeah, I think I'll thank everybody for coming, and thank to the speakers, and hope we had another enjoyable evening, and we'll do the same thing again in October. Only in October, our speaker will be talking about the cacti of Brazil. So quite a different topic, and nothing there is cold hardy. So
What's